Sarah would have to back up my decision, because once one of us makes a decision, that's both of us have made the decision. So Sarah would be having to back up my decision and defend it to the director team or to the board or whatever. And then as soon as the meeting gets on the phone to me, "This is a terrible decision. Why are you making this?" And so trying to some of those dynamics, the most organized I've ever been in my life. If you imagine sharing an inbox with someone, sharing a calendar, everything's got to be really well organized.
Hi, Ben. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to the Charity Changemakers Podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Adam.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I can never give you justice to these introductions. So I always like to give people a minute or so just to quickly introduce yourself, who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Ben. I work for a small youth work charity in South Oxfordshire called Train. And I've had a bit of a winding journey through the charity sector. I'm sure we'll get into that more today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, certainly will. Yeah, absolutely. The podcast is all about hearing about people's career journeys, things that have worked for them, things that have helped them along the way and made that progression through their career. And going to be really fascinating to hear about that journey into obviously chief executive of a local charity where you're based at the moment. We always have some quickfire questions. We're obviously at the start of season 3, so we've got some new quickfire questions for people. So I've got them in the sheet in front of me because I've not memorised them yet. So I guess the first one, before we get into the big stuff about talking about the career journey, Ben, what does a good weekend or a day off look like for you?
I really look forward to my weekends. I normally take my daughter to gymnastics and watch her do a gym on a Saturday morning. If I'm lucky, I get out myself to play Saturday League football in the afternoon. I'm still hanging on in there and playing Saturday League. They're just quite chilled out. Maybe go to church on Sunday and see some friends there. See if I can persuade my other daughter out for a coffee or something. Time with family and relaxing.
Yeah, brilliant. What position are you playing on a Saturday afternoon?
These days they've got me in centre mid. I've been a fullback my whole life, but I think when you get a bit older, then the speed goes and they want you just sat in the middle.
Yes, right, okay. I went the other way for me. I used to play centre mid and they moved me back to centre back. The boots were hung up quite a few years ago. When my son started playing and then got into coaching this evening. So do that instead of the weekend. So no, that's great, good. So what's something that brings you something small that brings you a disproportionate amount of joy?
This is an embarrassing one, but I love fixing stuff. And so, if a white good or something in the house breaks or there's something at work, like the printer breaks, then just fixing it and getting it working again. I've always loved that. I did my undergrad in engineering, so I've got a bit of a mind for that sort of thing. And like working with my hands from time to time. Yeah,
absolutely. Not embarrassing at all, Ben. I think that's a brilliant skill to have. Yeah, absolutely. And very, very, very handy. That reminds me of a story. We might come back to that later in the podcast when we begin talking about smaller charities as well. So final quickfire question. What's one thing that people always assume about your job that just isn't true?
I guess that it's glamorous in some way. Whenever you've got the CEO title attached to it, people think, there's this kind of glamour attached to it. And the opposite is true. This is by far the least glamorous job I've ever had. And, I've been the one unblocking toilets and sinks and all those kind of cliche things that you end up doing in a small charity that I know you're familiar with as well, Adam. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, indeed. It absolutely comes down to comes down to doing absolutely everything, isn't it? From representing the charity to the local MP, funding bids to, like you say, emptying the bins on a Friday type thing. So, absolutely. Great. No, that's really, really helpful. It's really nice to get to know, obviously, guests on the show a little bit better as we start off the podcast. And as we say, this podcast is all about learning about people's career journeys, things that have helped them along the way, the way in which they've progressed and opportunities that have come their way. I think with the exception of one person, I'm still to find someone who, very much had in their mind from a young age, from the schooling that they were going to give their career to the charity sector or end up working within the charity sector. So I'm always interested. It always feels like a big question, but I'm always interested. So how did you end up here? How did that first opportunity, that first step into the charity sector happen for you?
Yeah, well, it certainly wasn't my plan growing up. I was pretty hard set on the military, actually, but various circumstances meant I didn't go down that road. I did an engineering degree, and so I started off in highways design. But I was a fairly new graduate when I was designing roads and finding it terribly dull. and I just wanted something different. It didn't feel like a good fit, and I did a gap year kind of with an organisation called BMS back when gap years were a bit more popular, I think, than they are now. And the opportunity came up to come and run that program that I'd been through, and I just thought that looks like a dream job, and it really was. So that was my kind of route in. I went and got that job, and spent my first kind of 7 years in the charity sector doing volunteer management and running an international volunteering program.
Yes, yeah, at BMS.
That's right. Yeah, it was, and honestly, I still look back at it and think it was one of the most fulfilling and rewarding jobs that I've had in the sector. And I've developed a bit of a mantra actually throughout my career, which is that everything you build will get destroyed except for the stuff you build in the lives of other people. And that's just from time after time. You take a job, you set up these great projects or programs or whatever, and then you watch your successor come along and smash them all to pieces. And it's kind of given me this understanding actually that the stuff that really matters and the stuff that lasts forever is kind of what you're able to build in the lives of others. And I think with that gap year program, I had that chance. I got sort of 18 to 23 year olds or something come through every year and got the chance to really kind of invest in them. And I think that stuck with me throughout my career. And I still build kind of programs and projects and stuff. But my first priority is always kind of, right, who are the people I can kind of invest in? Because I know that stuff lasts.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what, Ben? It completely passed me by in conversations that we've had previously that you started off. So it was an action team, right? With BMS, and I didn't realise that because obviously I did an action team. 26 years.
I forgot about that, Adam.
That's right.
Yeah.
That gap year program with BMS has got a lot to answer for, right? I think in exactly what you say, you build what you build in young people. I came back from mine and sat my parents down and was like, right, I'm not going to university. I'm not doing what I was planning to do, go do a journalism course. And, I'm going into ministry, and, that's ended up in charity sector and the route we are now. But I think I reflect on the gap year and the team that I had. One ended up as a missionary, two of us ended up as Baptist minister, one ended up working in as a doctor. I think that 9-month program has a massive impact on, and that's just one action team, let alone yourself, and then all of the people that you've then helped get into that program beyond. So it's fascinating how that program and similar programs can have such an impact on people at an early stage of their career.
Yeah, and it's what's brought me back to the kind of youth work scene, obviously in a slightly different shape now with Train, but that investment in young people is so important.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I guess one of the things I'm really interested about is that you were at BMS for a long time, over 14 years or so, and I guess a variety of steps within the charity, and like you're saying, going from program management to fundraising to obviously and then as a director. Talk to us about, I guess, that whole experience of starting that journey in BMS. And what that looked like, and I guess the opportunities that were put in front of you in those early days at your time there.
Yeah, and BMS was a great employer for me. I had a lot of wonderful opportunities there, and very grateful for. And it felt like they were taking a punt on me. I got that job running the action team program when I was 22. I was I won't describe what I was like back then. I was not nearly as well rounded as I might like to think I am now. And I got a lot of patience and a lot of grace from a lot of colleagues, and I'm always grateful for that. I think that I was naturally restless. I didn't expect to be there long, and so every couple of years I was looking for new opportunities and responsibilities, and being semi-vocal about that, which probably kind of helped in terms of creating some new opportunities there. So I went from just running the gap year program. I then kind of made a few kind of pitches to say, when someone else left, I'm saying, well, let me take on their program as well, or I'll do that as well. And so built a bit of a portfolio of responsibilities. And after about 7 years, I think I was kind of ready to move on to something else. And that's why I looked elsewhere. And then that's when the communications director came and tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, before you go elsewhere, what about jumping departments and having a go at fundraising? So that was Not something I expected to do, but a really interesting opportunity and one I'm really grateful for. And that led to them being responsible for both the communications and the fundraising portfolio, and so learned a lot about not only fundraising but marketing, communication side of things as well.
Yeah, yeah. What was it that you think that director saw in you at that stage, Ben? To come and have that sort of tap on the shoulder and say, well, look, hang on, I think we've got some transferable skills here.
Yeah, I think it was probably the analytical, the kind of engineering brain a little bit, and the ability to kind of just, and particularly on a problem solving side of things, just be able to wrestle with problems, understand them, gather a lot of information, and start to make plans. Those sort of skills. But again, it was someone taking a chance on me, which I'm very grateful for.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And what was that? So you made that transition into the other department, so the fundraising and comms team. What was the first role in that team then? Where did they start you off?
Yeah, I was given a small team. Fundraising was a bit of a for an old organisation like BMS, and it had been around 200 and something years. Fundraising was a bit of a new concept. Obviously, they've been doing it since forever, but it was handled quite differently, principally through churches. And I think there was a recognition that actually really need to grow other avenues of fundraising, and they were looking at major donors and individual givings and legacies. And so I was given a small team with a bit of a free mandate to say, actually, you can go and pursue some of these other opportunities. So it was a great chance to experiment. I mean, I got straight onto the fundraising diploma and just kind of hoovered up as much as I could. I learned so much from other people. And I think one of the things I learned, and I knew it already, but I really learned in that role, was the value in your peer and professional networks. And so just reaching out to all these kind of fundraisers and professionals who I didn't necessarily know in sister organizations, even kind of competitors, so to speak. You find the charity sector is really not that competitive most of the time. People are so open to those conversations, and that's how I really kind of built up some of my expertise, partly through the studying, partly through the practice, but really through the peer networks was huge as well. And we had some good early success, which led to kind of more opportunities and more responsibility there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that peer-to-peer, like you say, is so important. How did you seek out those people? Was it just a case of picking up the phone, emails, just getting direct, trying to build that network?
Yeah, all of those, being proactive, getting on LinkedIn, you hear someone say something you like and you just kind of comment, and then leads to a direct message saying, hey, can I buy you a coffee sometime? Being really proactive. You know what, in all the times I've reached out on LinkedIn, my success rate is stupid. It's like 90% of people accept an opportunity for a quick chat or something. I find in this sector particularly, people are so warm and open to, and that's been true of career conversations, because I've done that a number of times when I've come to these pivot points in my career, thinking, what do I do next? Reaching out to people who maybe just that bit further on, been around the block a couple of times, got some key insights, and just reached out to total strangers sometimes and saying, hey, this is where I'm at. Would you be up for a kind of quick chat? And always such a kind of warm response, and it served me so well. I wouldn't be where I am without some of those conversations from people I've spoken to once in my life. I can't even remember their name; they don't remember who I am, and
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's absolutely fascinating. Like you say, those sometimes there's those one-off conversations, either being sought out or can sometimes just happen at a networking event or a conference or whatever. Those type of interactions can have such a massive impact.
I think they're particularly important in fundraising, and fundraisers will understand this when I say that often within organizations you're fighting a lot of internal battles, and so whereas it should feel like your allies are in your organization and then your competitors are outside, a lot of the time at fundraising it feels like your allies are your fundraising peers outside, and your competitors are the heads of finance and others within the organization. And so that's your kind of team sometimes, those peer networks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess particularly, in the context of where you're trying to, you were talking about changing the way in which, or bringing new income streams, new ways of fundraising into an organization that, they must have been around a very long time, hundreds of years, that shift, that change. or at least that evolution of how they're doing things is it's always going to be difficult.
One of the most interesting things is you assume these are new income streams and new ideas. Those of us who've been around fundraising a little while will know actually there's nothing new under the sun. And when you dig into the archives, you found all this stuff's been done before. And what I found fascinating, BMS has a wonderful history and wonderful archives. I dug into all that and found the kind of fundraising appeals from 50, from 100 years ago, and pulled them out. And I used that as a bit of the case for saying, like, actually, this isn't new. Look at this campaign we ran in 1924 that raised like equivalent of, I don't know, millions. And so, yeah, there was something really quite fun about doing that in an organisation with such rich history. But yeah, I mean, more generally in terms of bringing people on board, I'm going to be honest, it's not always been my strength. It's something I struggle with, and I think that was really key when I went into the job share. And so when, they were looking for a new director of communications and fundraising, that was never going to be me alone. And partly because some of the diplomacy skills and some of that kind of visionary stuff and bringing people on a journey just isn't where I swim most comfortably as a leader. Those are more learned behaviours for me. And I learned a lot from my job share in doing that.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated to explore that a bit further as well, Ben, because obviously, so you joined BMS, you started volunteer, you made this transition into the fundraising and comms team, and there's a progression there that happens that eventually leads to being, the director of the department, like you say, within this job share. You've just shared a little bit there about how that came about, but talk to us further about how it happened, and then. I guess an openness from the organisation to move into that type of scenario, and then how that I guess played out in a co-share role.
So we were looking for a new director. I kind of had sort of ruled myself out already, but I had a colleague in the department who's in a kind of project management role. So not necessarily even in senior management at the time, but I saw such leadership strength in her, and I also knew she'd had leadership roles elsewhere previously. So I kind of approached her and said, listen, I really think you should consider this. I think you'd be amazing for our department. And she'd just come back from maternity leave and was just like, there's no way. I think we both had young families. We both knew this was like a minimum 50-hour-a-week job. It was a tough job. And she then actually came back to me. I think she might have gone to someone else first, but we won't dwell on that. She actually came back to me and said, hey, I can't do it on my own. What do you think about going for a job share? And we kind of thrashed it out, and we spent a lot of time again exploring those networks. Right, who else is doing job shares in the sector? How does it work? What are the options? And put a proposal forward and went for it and got the job. We went for what's referred to as like a pure job share model, where we try and just morph into one person. So rather than distribute responsibilities between us, we just try and behave the same. That means we just have one email account, one Teams account, one calendar, everything is shared, and we just do really kind of thorough handover between us. So it's a really different way of working. It's really intense. You have to absolutely trust and be able to work with your job share partner. But the success rate of them statistically is incredibly high. Really, really successful way of working. And it was fabulous for us, who were two people with young families who would have excluded ourselves from the role because of our caring responsibilities, actually being able to step into that. So it was just fabulous.
Yeah. And like you say, I guess within organisations, you're always fighting internal politics, or can sometimes feel like that. I mean, how, when you put that proposal forward, I guess I'm intrigued as to how an organisation, which may well not have given it any, gone to market thinking this could be a possibility. How was it received? Just then, not in that first instance, but then across the organisation.
Yeah, really well. Nothing but support, and I think at the time BMS had really been leaning into more progressive kind of HR practices. I think you had Mary on the show not so long ago, who was the HR manager there at the time, and was really kind of pushing some of this cultural stuff within the organisation. So the environment was just right for it, thankfully.
Yes, yeah, no, that's brilliant. And talk to us then about the practicalities then of being in a job share. Like you say, it's it's very easy to say, you've got to implicitly trust the other person, and you kind of have one Teams account, one email account, and go. But I can't all be plain sailing.
No, and some of the stuff behind the scenes, and you'd have those funny situations where you'd have to back up, Sarah would have to back up my decision, because once one of us makes a decision, that's both of us have made the decision. So Sarah would be having to back up my decision and defend it to the director team or to the board or whatever. And then as soon as the meeting gets on the phone to me, "This is a terrible decision. Why are you making this?" And so, trying to, some of those dynamics, the most organized I've ever been in my life. If you imagine sharing an inbox with someone, sharing a calendar, everything's got to be really well organized. Handover notes have to be near perfect so that they're not kind of caught out in meetings that they're going into. You're kind of starting a conversation, one person finishing it with another, that kind of dynamic. So it's a fascinating way of working. But I would say so many strengths to it. One of them was just having someone in your corner, always on your side, someone to always bounce ideas off, someone you just trust to tell you when you've been an idiot or when you're on track and you need to dig in because this is a principal thing you need to go for. And also constant feedback about my performance as a leader or how I did in this meeting. Like we're constantly we've got that trust there that then and so I grew so much as a leader through Sarah's influence.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think the advantages were to the organisation?
Well, I think they got to people who would have excluded themselves otherwise. I think that's the most obvious. I think there was a little bit of kind of two for the price of one and being able to play to each other's strengths. And actually, we can use Sarah in this context or Ben in this context. I think when we went, when we were on our days on, we were 100%, we were like 100 miles an hour in a way that wouldn't be sustainable for 5 days a week. So I think you really did get the best out of us both. I think it signaled kind of progressive practices to wider organisation. I think it created an opportunity for Sarah as a woman to enter the director team, and we didn't have a lot of women in the director team. That was great for role modelling to the rest of the organisation, and we did have a fairly female heavy staff team as well. So yeah, a whole bunch of benefits.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I just wonder about how well it was received by, I guess, your direct reports, the directorate, because, like you say, you've got a job share, two directors that are on it, 100%, 100 miles an hour all the time because of that job share. Was it? Do you think it was an easy team to work within or report in? How did it feel for the team? Do you think?
Yeah, I think for them, we were just very lucky. We had great director. We had a senior management team in the department who were just wonderful, who believed in us, who supported us, supported our application as well. They were aware of us applying for it and backed us for it, and so we're invested in seeing it succeed as well. I know that's not always the case for everyone, and some of those direct reports can be the trickier ones. I think particularly probably the hardest thing felt for them where they'd been used to a kind of team dynamic where the director and the senior management were one team. There suddenly became this two teams where there's Ben and Sarah have their own private meetings, the two of them, and so the nature of their job share, and then and so that was probably the hardest dynamic actually, and making sure that we had transparency and clarity and just the strength of relationships there to make that work.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, they were very patient.
Yes, yeah. No, it's good. It's fascinating to hear. I mean, we're seeing more and more, like you say, people step into job shares in the current market, and I would say it's not something that you see a huge uptake across the charity sector in, but that benefits the organisations, that sort of two for one, is a really interesting concept that I think many other boards and senior leadership teams are exploring and considering. So yeah, it's been really interesting to hear about that. I guess for you stepping into a director role, I mean, earlier you talked about peer-to-peer support and obviously the fundraising diploma that you went into. Was there sort of training or mentoring or things to support you in that step into a leadership role, or things that you found that have really helped you make that transition?
Yeah, well, as you'd expect, nothing put on by the organisation. A bit like going into management, no one ever trains you for it or teaches you, and you're kind of expected to learn on the job. And it was similar going into a director role as well. I think, again, I did some reading. I leaned into my peer networks and had Sarah kind of alongside me to support me in that. And but yeah, sometimes when I look back and I still wonder if actually, well, you always look back and think, oh, I would have done this differently. Oh, I've learnt lessons since. Yeah, maybe there's lessons actually I've learned in the latest transition that have equipped me more as a leader now that maybe I just wasn't ready to learn at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's move into that a little bit.
Okay.
Talk about that transition then from being a director of an international humanitarian organisation, mission context, to chief executive of a local charity, youth charity, obviously working in Didcot and now wider, across South Oxfordshire. Talk to me about that decision. I guess was that a wrestle from director to chief executive, or was it? Yeah, how did that kind of feel? How did it come about? From going from a medium-sized organisation to a small organisation. I guess there's lots of things. I guess lots of balls that you were probably juggling in the air and thinking about. Is this the right next move? So yeah, I'd be intrigued to hear about that transition for you.
Oh, it was crazy, Ad. It really was crazy. So, I mean, the first thing to say is that Sarah, due to family circumstances, had to step away from the job share partway through, and I guess I kind of defaulted to taking on the role full time by myself.
Yeah.
It didn't feel the same without Sarah. It wasn't necessarily a job that I'd always wanted full time. And I think when I stepped into it full time, I kind of thought, yeah, we'll do this for stability, but it's probably not going to be a long term thing. It got to the point where it felt like it was the time. It was a good time to move on, and both from my side and from BMS's side. I didn't know what I wanted to go, and I was on a 3-month notice period, and it just felt like, do you know what? I've just got to take a step of faith here and hand in my notice. So I handed in my notice in the September, and I think we'd have interacted a little bit around that time, actually, Adam. So you might remember bits of this story, and then just kind of waited and looked around and started job hunting and said, we'll see what comes. And I definitely thought, you know what? I've got a good career opportunity here. I've got my kind of first fundraising director under my belt with some good income levels in terms of a track record on the leadership side and on the income side. Now's a chance for my big break. Now I can go and get a fundraising director in a large kind of London-based charity and watch that kind of take off. That was kind of what was going through my head at the time. And so then to think, right, actually, I'm going to end at how I ended up at Train. It was crazy. I mean, I was, just in terms of salary, I was thinking right now's a chance to really take a big salary leap as well, like going to a London-based job. I ended up taking a £20,000 pay cut to go to Train. And I guess it was reflecting on what are the actual values, what's the lifestyle I want, what's the mission I want, and what's the work that I really want to be doing. And as I went through that whole exploration process during those slightly tumultuous 3 months of having handed in my notice but not having anywhere to go, I probably learned a lot about what I really want from life and work and from career, and how those things interact, all of which led me to taking a job right, a stone's throw from my house, working with young people in my local community. And it's been a brilliant decision. I haven't regretted it. It's been a wonderful decision. It took a little while to get there.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about Train. Yeah, introduce the charity to us. Tell us a little bit about what you do as an organisation, then we'll talk a bit more about that transition into a chief executive role.
So we're a small youth work charity that works in Didcot. So Didcot's a town of about 30,000 people, and so the youth work charity was set up years and years ago, initially by the churches. It's kind of moved a little bit away from their ownership since. It's kind of me and about 4 or 5 youth workers. That's the whole kind of charity. We're starting to build a bit more now, and we do detached youth work, kind of out and about on the streets with young people, mentoring work in the schools, and then run open access youth clubs and other activities, and then kind of citizenship and participation stuff as well for young people. A particular specialism for working with young people who are a bit disengaged from school or society generally.
Yeah. And talk to us then about that, because it's a big shift. I mean, it is a big shift, right? From BMS, where you got this international operation. nice officers, fairly slick, really slick in it. It's been slick for years, and its comms and it's an approach and the way that it does things to. And I don't want to just place my experience of working in a small charity, but I used to work in a youth charity in Aldershot where the boiler wouldn't work, and the building was cold, and you had to do all sorts of different things. I literally was asked in my interview, could I fix a photocopier, which is what we were speaking earlier. That kind of reminded me of actually a trustee did ask me that in my interview. Can you fix a photocopier? I was like, well, yeah, let's go have a look. It's a massive, it's a big culture change, absolutely. Suddenly you are doing absolutely everything across the organisation. Talk me about that transition, how you found it. I went the other way. I went from small local charity into a bigger international organisation, and I'm fascinated by going the other way and how you found that.
What a journey. I was still wearing like shirts and jackets to work for like the first 6 months. I just couldn't get out of my system. It took so long. I would say that I feel more in my own skin. I feel more at home. I feel more comfortable. And I don't think I knew it at the time, but there's a degree of kind of play acting that happens it obviously happens in corporate, but I think sometimes big charity can lend itself a bit towards corporate. And I probably sucked that up a little bit too much. So I think I do feel more myself and more in my own skin. And I hope if I went back to charity, big charity, and I think I probably will, that I'd be a more authentic version of myself in doing that. I think the other thing I'd say is that there's so many joys to small charity, particularly around just the absence of any bureaucracy and the ability to just get stuff done and move really fast. And there's no BS jobs just because we can't afford any BS jobs. So like everyone who's employed is doing some really important, really vital work, and you can just cut through the noise quite quick. And I've really enjoyed that side of things. Working with youth workers, it sounds like you've had experience this. Is just such a delight. They're great fun, they're a really fun. Kind of, I say office atmosphere, youth centre atmosphere, I guess. But a learning curve. And I think the thing that I've appreciated, there's so much, but I love that the variety is a common one that will get cited. Oh, one day you're fixing the photocopy, the next day you're running payroll and whatever else. I think for me, as someone who's always loved learning, the ability to just learn such a breadth of skills. I'd not really done any accounting before I came into this. So coming in and doing all the charity accounting has been really interesting. I'm doing a master's in charity accounting now at the kind of Bayes Business School. So that's been an amazing opportunity. I've loved doing that. I think, doing IT and getting my head really into some of that kind of things, HR, payroll, all the stuff you do, and all of it, I feel like I'm like just hoovering up information, which is really fun to still be doing at this point in my career.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think inherently the fact that you're a fixer and that's in you, do you think that's really important for leading local smaller charity?
I think I think it has its advantages. I think it has its advantages for sure. I think the downside is that you become less, and I've seen this in my own leadership of the charity, is you get into that trap of, I can do everything. And therefore you end up doing everything. You don't lean on others. You don't draw in volunteers in the way you would. And so as I talked about earlier, you're not building that kind of movement together in the way that a better leader might.
Yeah, absolutely. But clearly you've stepped into this leadership role. And you talked about, you didn't feel like maybe in the director role at BMS was there that you were ready, that you were ready for that. I mean, how do you think your leadership sort of developed over the last, 5+ years, I guess, as now chief exec and working presumably quite closely with the board of trustees?
I hope it's developed. I hope it's improved. I hope I'm a better listener. I hope I'm a better encourager. And I hope I'm becoming a better strategist. That's one of the things I've often struggled with is strategy, and Sarah was such a great strategist. And so there's some of those skills that I still feel I'm learning. But I would say this as well, that one of the a really common career mistake is to mistake aptitude for alignment, um, or, or su- or success for being in the right place. And just because you can do something, and just because you can really stretch those nerves to be like, oh yeah, I found a way to do this and to be good at it and to have some success in it, then to think that's where to think that's necessarily where you're meant to be, like that's the best fit for you. And maybe there was a bit of that with fundraising for me, that actually I found I really could do this. I could leverage these skills in this way and get it to work. And then take a step back and say, I don't actually enjoy it that much. It's not necessarily where I'm aligned. There's so much more than, hey, can I do the job? Does it fit with my values? Do I enjoy it? Does it fit with my mission? Does it fit with my lifestyle? All those questions that come into career decisions. And so, obviously, I always want to be growing as a leader, but also I'm really open to the idea that I'm not the best leader, and I don't necessarily have to be. And it could well be that, do you know what, I'd be great as a COO. And there's someone else who's doing the leadership and the vision and the culture and getting people on board and bringing them in the right direction. And I can just sub in. And obviously there's still leadership skills in that kind of COO role. But that kind of learning journey for me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about, I guess, like you say, having that mission alignment, right? So that, we all want to be excited to get out. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but we want to be excited to get out of bed in the morning and go to work, because we, dedicate so much of our time to what we're doing. And I guess within that local context, it's always lovely to be able to see the impact, very much, in your local community, on your doorstep, that the charity's having as well, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is. When I was going through that process of having handed in my notice, right, I'm going to do some kind of career exploring. I've read a lovely career book. You may be familiar with it. It's called Designing Your Life. And one of the things they highlighted for me in that, which was really interesting, was mission alignment is half the picture. You also have to enjoy what you're doing every day. And whether that's spreadsheets, or whether that's people, or whether that's doing youth work or whatever else, mission is not enough. And so I love the mission of what we do. I love seeing lives transformed. I love seeing young people in disengaged from society get reintegrated, people getting back into school, people getting helped, having positive opportunities. I love all that. It's not enough, actually, and we can kid ourselves in the charity sector to think like the mission and the purpose is enough, and then put up with miserable jobs because of the purpose. Whereas actually, no, we need to enjoy going into work every day, not just for the end goal, but for the actual reality of what we're doing between 9 to 5, and discovering what it is that gives us that joy in terms of the tasks that we do each day. I think it's a really important part of that career planning.
Yeah, absolutely. And you find joy in spreadsheets, it must be, at this point then, with the accounting masters that you're doing.
You know what? Again, it was one of those things during that 3 months of having handed in my notice. I said, what are my goals? When I choose this next job, what's my selection criteria? And one of them was, I want to do more studying. I want to go back to school. I want to do this master's. I had my eye on the charity management masters at Bayes for so long and wanted to do it. And I was like, this is the time I'm going to get it done. And it's been a great decision. Going back, studying more. I do love learning. I love being in the classroom. And yeah, there's great joy both in the studying and then applying that knowledge through the spreadsheets. And who'd have thought? Accounting, yeah, really, really interesting. And I think people assume that that accountants will often be these kind of task-focused introverts, these blue personalities. And sure, we've all met lots of them, but they don't have to be. And actually, the sector and the discipline as a whole needs that breadth of perspective to integrate it better with how organisations function. And so I'm kind of quite looking forward at some point in my career to being a maverick and rebellious finance director or something who just breaks a lot of those rules.
No, absolutely. And then where the sector's got them, we hear people say, "Oh, the finance director's the blocker." You're like, well, no, actually, that department, when you get into the bigger one, they're the enabler, and the massive, huge support Obviously, particularly to the fundraising, having been a fundraising director as you have, particularly to the fundraising team, when the finance director's on board, and supporting and giving that wisdom that they bring from understanding what's in the what's in the spreadsheets. It makes a huge difference. So it's really encouraging to hear the learning that you're doing, and excited to see how that develops for you and your career. Ben, as we sort of draw to a close or towards the end of the podcast, I kind of got the question that if you've got one lesson that you've learned the hard way that shaped you as a leader or helps you become the leader that you are today as you reflect on your career to date, is there something that sort of springs to mind or jumps to the front of your mind?
Yeah, I think I probably learned the hard way that I always used to think happiness would be on the far side of our goals, and you kind of pursue these different ambitions or goals, and when I get there or when I get to that point or achieve that success at work or in life, then that's when I can really enjoy life. And there's two problems with that. One is that, well, you're miserable until you get there. And then the second problem is that, oh, surprise, surprise, as soon as you get there, your brain's moved the goalposts, and that now happiness will only come like when the next goal's achieved. And so just learning to find that kind of contentment and that joy in, hey, what am I doing today, and where am I going to find the joy in today? And not attaching it to stuff that's outside your control, or even the stuff that's inside your control that's on the horizon, is really important. And a lot of that comes to with bringing that career stuff into line with the lifestyle that we want as well. And I know that I said at the start, I just love playing football, and so making sure that my career fits around that, I can go out and play football, and my we talk about mission. Like my mission first and foremost is to be a great father and a great husband, and then making sure that career kind of fits in around, and sure there's career mission too that fits in around that. So just making sure that alignment's all there so that we can get the happiness each day.
Yeah, brilliant, Ben. That's these conversations, they just fly by, but that's been so incredibly insightful. I've really enjoyed the conversation. There's lots I'll take away. Trying to find that joy, find that alignment in each and every day. I'm sure this podcast is going to be well received. I assume you're happy that we sort of tag you up on LinkedIn. If people, you talked about building the network. If people want to reach out, happy that they do that and come that way.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'd be flattered if anyone wanted to reach out, and would be very happy to chat to anyone about career paths. I love it. I mean, I'm envious of what you do, Adam, in so many ways. And I've thought about recruitment myself, because I get such a kick. Those times, either as a manager or as just a peer, where I've managed to get people into the right jobs. It's so rewarding, isn't it? Like, it's so fulfilling. So
absolutely.
Big fan of what you do.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about alignment. This is the longest I've ever been in a job, and it's exactly for that. But that kick that comes from it, and having that joy in what you do every day is so important. So when we put it out, we'll absolutely tag you, tag the organisation, encourage people to go and have a look at Train and the great work that they're doing, that you're doing there as well. And we look forward to we'll definitely keep in touch if recruitment's on the radar as well, Ben.
Definitely. Yeah.
So yes, we'll keep in touch. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Adam.
If you've enjoyed the podcast, please do subscribe and share it with somebody else in the sector. If hearing about the career journey in this episode has inspired you, I've put together a bunch of practical resources to help you land your next ideal role in the charity sector, including support on how to put together a CV and cover letter that will really work for you. You can join for free at the Charity Careers Network, a growing community full of advice, tools and honest conversations about charity careers. Both the podcast and the network are proudly powered by Charisma Charity Recruitment. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.